Hello, welcome to Matters with DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. A bit of a caveat for this episode. I am in 3 or 4 different games, either running it or playing them, and they are at the moment pretty much some of the best gaming I've had in a long time. But it is from these games that I am in that I draw a lot of my inspiration and examples, both good and negative. What I don't want this whole vlog experience to become is me complaining about things that go wrong in games. Because I'm not here to complain, I'm here to educate, hopefully. So while this particular issue may contain some gripes from me, this is me contextualizing them and trying to move forward, and well, at the very least, I can talk about an issue that has cropped up before. It will crop up again. It is a problem in role-playing games because there are people involved in them. 2 subjects and how they cross often badly. Metagaming and agency. One at a time. Metagaming is gaming the game instead of gaming the situation. When you're playing a role-playing game, traditionally, you are trying to play the character. You can play a character with a higher intelligence than yours or a lower. I have whole game worlds up on the shelf, but if I play a character who is not streetwise or all that intelligent, who isn't too knowledgeable about the world, as a lot of characters can start out, and we start playing Cyberpunk, and I start spouting the appendix from the Night City source guide as though I know where everything is, I'm metagaming. I'm using information about the game that I have that my character does not. The game master drops a hint about something that's going to happen mechanically. Well, once you get through that door, everything's going to be like a -4, so just make sure everything's going to be alright. And when I start to plan based on that, well, I better start stacking my buffs now before we go through. No real reason my character would know to do this, but I'm aware I need to do this, so the game master informed me that so that I could help with the math as things go on, because helping with the math is important. But now if I play my character as though he knew there was this penalty of sorts coming up and had to adapt for it, I am metagaming. When I have a conversation outside of the game, between last week's game and this week's game, no time is going to have passed. You're going to show up in exactly the same situation, but I will have thought about it in the meantime, and I will have formulated a plan, having had time to think that my character did not. That's metagaming. Everyone metagames. It can get very obnoxious when you've got players who know things about the game world, particularly that the game master does not. And I haven't read all of the D&D 5th ed supplements yet, the big ones. I have a number of players who do, so I get a constant barrage of, can I do this from here? And the first question that jumps into my mind from a metagaming perspective is, how the hell would your character even know that existed? It generally works out, though, because I want people to have what they have, and new toys come out, and you want to play with the new toys. It's that or scrap the campaign and start over with a new one where everyone has access to the new information. Everyone metagames. One of the challenges in role-playing is to keep the metagaming to a minimum. That there are things that the players are going to know that the characters aren't. There are things the characters should probably know that the players probably don't. That's why there are skill rolls. And there's perception checks and stuff, so the characters can get that information. I know a lot about psychology and hypnosis. If my character doesn't have that background, then my character can't use that information, although I will more often than not lean on it a little bit. Metagaming can make things very difficult for the game master who is trying to control a situation, who's trying to present a situation in such a way that the characters, the sheets of paper, the player characters, the fictional characters involved don't know something is happening or have no idea that this is a possibility, but the players are a little more savvy than their pieces of paper, and they know something is going to happen, but the game master still has to try to present this through the character's lens. That is a difficulty, and one that you can ask the table to stop metagaming, or you can point out what the characters do and do not know, but you have to account for that from time to time. Agency. I've used the term before. It's about time that I defined it. Agency is the ability to hold and exert power. A character is said to have agency when the character is empowered to act for themselves, make decisions that they would make. Not that the fictional character is going to make decisions absent of the player's desires for them, but that as a player, the character on the table is my instrument for exerting my agency in that game world. That is how I pick things up and put things down and negotiate or shoot people or destroy an empire or found one or all of the above in that role-playing game. I can take actions because my character has agency. The game master has 99.9999% of all the agency in a role-playing game. They are telling a story. They have an entire world to do it with. The weather, the axial tilt of the planet, the condition of the sun, how many gamma rays there are in local space. If that is something that is important, the game master has the agency to create or change that. Every person that you meet in a role-playing game who is not a player character, every non-player character or NPC, every mayor, wife, daughter, librarian, warrior, mercenary, everyone is someone that through whom the game master is exerting their agency. The only person or the only things that the game master does not have agency over is the player characters, and vice versa. Now, the game master, some game systems will allow people to swing agency around a little bit. Some players may contribute a little bit more to the game world. Some game masters may allow that to happen. Give me a backstory so that I can flesh the game world out. Give me some, is there someone who's following you? Do you have an apprentice or a mentor? Is there someone who is important to your character that we need to have stats for? Players can introduce agency in other places, but ultimately it comes down to the game master has the agency over everything but the player characters, and the player characters have agency over themselves. That line down the middle of the table. I don't try to run the game when I'm a player. That is me keeping my agency on this side. Well, don't the rules say this? Or maybe this should happen? Or wouldn't it be interesting if? Anytime I try to influence the game master to do something other than what the game master has planned or would normally do, anytime I try to exert more force of personality to alter things outside of my character's realm of operation, I'm crossing that line. I shouldn't do that. I may be guilty of that more often than I would like to say. Anytime the game master reaches across the table and stops asking you what your character would do and starts telling you what your character would do, the game master is intruding on the player's agency in the game. Characters can't do that. Well, there are things that are well defined what characters can and cannot do in a role-playing game. That's why there are these books full of rules. And if the rules say that a character can do something, but the game master says for some reason that no, your character's incapable of doing that at the moment, despite rules in play, the game master has removed agency from the player or players. Those things being laid out. Someone is trying to tell a story at that table. No, amend that. Everyone is trying to tell a story at that table, but the person in charge of starting the story and taking it to its conclusion is the game master. And they don't have the control of an author. An author just puts the characters in a situation and then writes the characters such that they get out of the situation or they don't, and the story is told. Excuse me. In a novel writing situation, the author has all the agency. He can exert his agency through his characters or through the world, how they choose. But the author has all the agency. In a role-playing game, the game master does not. But they still have the task of, hey everyone, here's a story that I want to tell. Here's how it starts. What do you do? And the story may have places that beats that it needs to hit, places that people need to go, events that need to happen. You plan a lot for certain events or certain stories. You have stats for buildings or ships or vehicles, and you want people to get to them, no matter how long it takes. Sometimes people spend a lot of time doing things that they would rather do than engage in your story, which is an interesting indication that maybe your story needs to go over that way a little bit, or your story needs to compel people to bring comment back over. And events can lead to that, but ultimately, it's the player's decision. The story that comes out at the end of this exercise is not the one the game master had in their head. If that was what we were looking for, if we wanted to see the story that the game master had in their head, the game master could just sit down and write it or tell the story. You don't need anyone else involved in the exercise to get that out. The story you get at the end of the role-playing game exercise is a story that everyone has told together. And no matter what the rule systems are, no matter what the dice mechanics are, or how action flows, or exactly how that agency is distributed, you want to cut down on the metagaming, and you want everyone to retain their agency. So what thing happened over the weekend? Star Trek game. Game Master is doing a really good job. We're all really engaged, and has been doing a lot of the stuff out of things that they have written or planned, and they went to a written adventure over this last weekend. An NPC was introduced. We did not trust the NPC. No one trusted the NPC. Well, none of the player characters trusted the NPC. For some reason, all the NPCs on the crew trusted this person implicitly. Oh, okay. We know exactly why. Because this character that we were introduced to that we did not trust had a description of an entirely wholesome appearance, and she had really, really good dice codes for convincing people that she had a wholesome appearance, and she had special merits and abilities that made it very difficult to tell in the game mechanics that this person was not, in fact, trustworthy. What the rest of us perceived, it was our PC senses tingling. We'd been in enough situations with similar people and similar circumstances that we knew not to trust it. That was a bit of metagaming on our part. Then again, this is the group where I learned the phrase, it's not whether or not you are paranoid, it's whether or not you are paranoid enough. We invoked that phrase. And yeah, we were a little paranoid. And no, we didn't trust this person. And we go through what was supposed to be a fairly terrible situation, but we are clever and resourceful, and through playing the game with outside of this untrustworthy person situation, we stuck pretty well away from metagaming for the rest of this. And I can't even say it was entirely metagaming to not trust the NPC that we didn't trust. Again, our characters had been through a lot politically and socially, to the point where when situations like this occurred, we were not trusting people. The campaign started with us in a position of not being very trusting people and never got any better on that front. So we stacked up precautions in case this untrustworthy NPC did anything that would injure us or allow them to get away with things that they should not. We had a holographically cloaked drone hovering over her shoulder. We had people guarding the ship that she left up in orbit. The end of the evening, after dealing with the planetary plague and engaging in acts of science and heroism, as is wont for a Star Trek game, the game master tossed off a casual statement that the character that we did not trust got a message and needed to go up to her ship to broadcast something to Starfleet safely. We were tired. Not everybody heard that statement. Very few people heard that statement. I did. I was in pain, personally, not my character. I had a bad back evening, and was towards the end of the evening, was trying to get to the end of it, and I just kind of nodded. And the character took all the information that they should not have had, beamed up to the ship, shot knifed the drone over her shoulder, knocked out the person that we had guarding it, beamed them back to the ship, and left, activating an active stealth field, which in Star Trek is a cloaking device in violation of treaty, and was gone. And our crew is experienced. We have been playing this game for a while. We were made dangerous characters from the beginning. We have only become more dangerous since then. There is no way that no ship that we have ever faced has ever evaded us, cloaked or not. So we jumped to weapon stations, and the game master informed us the script says she gets away. This is a failure on both sides of the table. We had metagamed a suspicion, despite the fact that there were numbers and dice codes on that NPC that said they should have been above suspicion. No one is above suspicion to these particular players. But then, in order to facilitate the acts in a published adventure. The Game Master removed all of the agency from the player characters. The script says she gets away. There is no script. There is an adventure. There are events. There are things that may or may not happen in that game. But because the player characters are the instrumentality of the player's agency, there is free will involved. You are not at that table because your actions do not have consequences and effects. You're at that table to produce effects and consequences in that game setting. And when the Game Master gives you the script says she got away, you're not playing a role-playing game in that 30 seconds. Suddenly, you're handed a book. Now, this is a movie. Nope, you're just watching for this at this point. And it was a key moment, and it had far-reaching consequences. We left that game angry. We spent an hour or two discussing how that should not have happened and why it should not have happened. And the Game Master was very good about providing us information about what the codes were on the NPC sheet and what kind of dice rolls she'd been making all along so that she could notice what was happening around her and prepare for it. And none of that. No explanation. No numbers on a sheet. No statistics or merits you can name take away the sting of the script says she gets away. We picked up and we moved on for what was left of the evening, trying to find a way that we could keep playing this game. Because I have been in games where this moment breaks it. And I'm not 100% sure that this one hasn't. No, we are adapting to the situation and moving ahead, but this was the last straw on a number of backs in the party. It caused the party to split. It destroyed the infrastructure that we had been building. It was catastrophic. All because the Game Master felt it more important that the published adventure's script be followed to its end. The published adventure didn't go past this. The published adventure has absolutely nothing in it about the consequences from this point on. It was a random event there in our campaign. It was game breaking. I'm still mad. You might be able to tell. It's one of those things where I'm going to be riled for a couple of weeks minimum, which is, this game happens every other week. So when we get back to it, we're going to have some discussions about moving forward, and does someone else want to run? It will probably get resolved. We're all adults. We're pretty good about this. We have faced worse things in the past. It was, again, a 30-second blip in the situation where otherwise we did just fine and would have done fine all the way through had our agency not been taken away. I guess the lesson here is I run most of my games through improvisation. I have an idea of where I want things to go. I start them off, I push them, and I let everything else be driven by decisions that the characters make. I even let things be run a bit by the metagaming on the other side of the table. If people stop and start talking about what could be coming up, or what the possibilities are, or what's the worst thing that could possibly happen, I listen to that. And that metagaming turns into plot. I don't have as big a problem with metagaming, but oh my lord, the moment I take agency away from the people on the other side of the table, there was going to be a noose. If you have to avoid over metagaming or stepping over that line into the agency on the other side of the table, make the first error. The agency is what everyone is there for. We are there at that table with those dice so that we can be somewhat empowered by our activities, so that we can feel empowered, so that we can contribute to a story, so that we can face the agency at the risk of the consequences of our actions. Now that's kind of the contract. You can have this agency, but your character might die if you use it wrong. Your character might die if you use it right. There's always going to be a random chance. You don't get to do absolutely everything you want. You get to try to do things you want to do, and where there's a possibility of failure, a random number generator will give you some idea of whether you succeeded or failed. Agency with risk. That's the game aspect of the role-playing game, that you don't exert your control in this world in the absence of consequences in that world. You don't remove that control from people without consequences either, but those are metagame consequences. Removing agency is a metagame action. For whatever reason, outside of the realm of what is happening at that table and what those characters are capable of, whatever is happening in that world, the script says she gets away. That is a metagame moment on the other side of the table. That is a metagame moment for the game master. It has consequences outside of the game world. Unfortunately. Everyone's still friends. All still talking to each other, and which helps because there will be dialogue about this. The Discord channel is going to be fascinating for the next couple weeks, but it's going to be a discussion, and they're not all good sessions. They can't all be good sessions. We destroyed the written adventure. There was supposed to be a 24-hour period during which this planet went into this horrific zombie plague decline from the moment we arrived, because it's going to take 24 hours to get enough successes to find the cure for this bioplague. And the person playing our medic is really dedicated and really, really determined, and solved the plague in 4 hours. There were 20 hours of events, which were happening about every 2 hours, that the Game Master never got to in the script. This is why I don't like published adventures, because they are inflexible. As a rule, they are inflexible. They have a static set of events, and a game master can, on the fly, rearrange those so that the same information comes out in a more compressed fashion, or events can go off that script so that what player characters have done to accommodate for it doesn't catch up. Listening to the metagaming helps in that area a lot. But if you are not going to modify that on the fly, if you're going to stick to the script, then a published adventure is probably a weakness. Not everyone can improvise. I'm well aware of that. But it's a good set of skills to work on anyway. Wish it was a little bit more upbeat, but this is also me venting a little bit and talking about the situation. It's going to get better. The situation's going to get better. It's still an awesome gaming group. Everyone is still friends. And moving forward, the campaign will either get super interesting or we'll move to something that will also be super interesting. Because the Manhattan Beach guys are some of the best. And I look forward to the next session a lot. In the meantime, thank you very much for following me along on this particular rant. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you would like to hear me talk about things other than this, or your own experiences with agency or metagaming, and things you'd like to hear me talk about, subjects you'd like to hear me cover, leave me a comment. You will love leaving me a comment. I will love getting a comment from you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification button next to it so you're alerted as soon as my videos become available. If you would like to help my channel in a more substantial manner, I invite you to hit me on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps. It allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum, this is What Does Matter to Me, and I'll see you next time in the next Matters of DeCorum.